Welcome to TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to go ahead and take a look at a requested function of AIM, which is all about accounts receivable. We've had accounts receivable, I believe, since the various earliest days of the DOS system, at least to my recollection, but not everyone is aware that all that functionality exists, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at that today. As always, over to the right side of the screen, adjacent to the playlist of our upcoming live streams, is the chat tab. Click on that chat tab, and then down at the bottom you will see the nickname button. Go ahead and click on that and type in your name and say hi. I'd love to chat with you, and that's going to be your way of asking questions throughout the course of this broadcast. So, as always, let's go ahead and switch over to my TriTech University playground here, and I'm experimenting with a slightly different type of office setup. Not that you would know that from anything different, but hopefully this will make things a little bit easier for me. So when it comes to accounts receivable, basically an accounts receivable transaction is any kind of transaction in AIM that just holds an open balance. And the most straightforward of those is a charge sale to a customer account. You could technically do that with any sort of transaction on any sort of account, but if you are considering this to be a main feature that you offer or a benefit that you offer your customers, you may want to consider creating a special customer type for those, just to potentially limit the total number of customers that may be charging their accounts and things like that. And I suppose I should clarify, when we talk about charge sales, what we're talking about is paying for something over time or later on for something they are bringing home today. That is opposite, or not necessarily opposite, but it's not the exact same thing as, say, for example, a layaway, where they're not taking it home today, they are paying for it over time, but there's no special requirements for a layaway transaction. When we talk about a charge sale, we're literally talking about paying you tomorrow for a cheeseburger today, if I'm showing my age with that soliloquy. So when we're talking about those types of customers, you may want to go in and establish a specific kind of customer default or customer type called charge customers. Now, like I said, you can have any type of customer charge their transactions to their open account balances, but by specifically creating a charge customer type, you can then specify that they are a charge customer. This little checkbox that you see here, if this is checkmarked, then there's no warning at point of sale when you go to charge a transaction to a customer's account. If this is not checkmarked, say for example on our default cash customer type, see how that's not checkmarked there, then if you try to charge something to that customer's account, AIM will pop up with a warning saying you are trying to charge a transaction to a customer's account. There are specific security settings kind of baked into that. So if you're not wanting anyone to just charge to their accounts, you want to kind of keep that in mind. And by that same extension, there is the ability to override that at point of sale, which by extension also means there is a security permission that you'll just want to make sure to consider. Hello, Kara, how are you? That you'll just want to make sure to consider that so that not everyone can just override a charge transaction, because then what's the point of having this type of setup? Now, that being said, when we're charging sales to a customer account, we of course want them to pay, preferably before, well, we want them to pay right away, of course, but preferably before they become late or things like that. Hello, Joellen. Preferably before they become late. So what you may want to consider is establishing some form of term. And you can see here in the terms section, you're able to go in and basically set the number of days that a customer has to pay off any charge sales that they're going to have on their account. If they go beyond that term, say for example today is, what is today's date? The 9th. If you charge something to a customer's account today and then they do not pay it 30 days from now, then that will look as a past due transaction on their account. Whereas if you do not set a term, or if you leave the term at 0, AIM doesn't necessarily know what the past due period should be, and so it will just never show as late. And by late we mean in red at point of sale. I'll try and whip up an example of that before the end of today's session. Now you may also want to consider, these are certainly not necessary, but you may want to also consider limiting the amount of balances that customers can have, and potentially charging interest on open balances. If you are going to go this route, another function you may want to consider is a minimum payment percentage of balance for the billing type. In essence, this makes their accounts be more similar to that of a revolving charge or a credit card type of credit line, where as opposed to needing to pay the full balance within 30 days, they only have to pay off a certain minimum payment amount, either a certain percentage of their total balance or a minimum dollar amount, whichever is greater, essentially. So if I've got $100 open on an account and I want to collect minimum of 25% or $10, then up until I pay off essentially 25, 50, eventually 75 or $80 or so of that, where now the payment percentage is less than that minimum payment, then the monthly statements, which we'll also talk about, will shift to say what that balance would be. So just things to kind of consider. Whatever you want to set up, you'll just want to make sure kind of coincides with your store policies and customer policies and things like that. So with all that being said, let's talk about a basic charge sale. So let's go ahead and just close out of here, and I'm just going to hop into a point of sale session, and let's pull up Mike. I believe, if I remember correctly, that Mike is set up as a cash customer. So we can kind of see up here, he's a cash customer. Now if I were to go and try to charge him something, say this valve oil, so when I go to charge a sale, one of your default payment methods by design is what's called a charge to account button here. You'll notice if I click this, it pops up a little message saying cannot charge to cash only customer. And that's the key term there, a cash only customer. Now I can override this because I have an administrative login. I can click this button and that allows me to override that, which then lets me finalize. And overall then you can kind of see, if I go back and look at his account, he does already have some charge sales. And in this case, you can kind of see how they're in red, and that's because they are past due. He's got terms on those transactions. Now if I switch to a different customer account, let's actually go ahead and remove that payment method here. I'll just right click and delete that so that I can switch this account out. And let's see here, do I have a John customer? I believe this gentleman, nope, he's a cash customer. So actually let's do this. Let's edit John and make him be a charge customer. So if I go ahead and switch him over to a charge customer, and you'll see it will ask if I'd like to apply the charge customer default values, and I'll say yes to that, which means that if we come over here and look at the billing tab, he now is going to have the terms specific to a bill type customer or a charge type customer, terms of 30 and so on and so forth. This is also I should mention this is something that you can do. You can come in here and you can make adjustments to individual customer accounts. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing type thing where you need to set up unique customer types in order to vary these amounts from one account to another. Kara is asking, would the credit limit take approvals into account? Excellent question, Kara. if I'm not mistaken, approvals are not specifically balances. So an approval essentially is just showing a value of the items that are out on an approval, but they're not necessarily due because the customer could always potentially return that approval. Now, if you turn around and you put that approval onto a charge sale, then by all means the credit limit would come into play. But thank you so much for the question. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save Mr. John Q customer here. So he is now officially a charge customer, and we'll see if I close that out and reopen that. He's now showing as a charge customer. So if I go and I do the same thing, let's do RT14, and we'll go and tender that. And you'll notice when I click the charge to account button, it doesn't pop up that message. It's basically saying, yep, this customer type is good to go with a charge of transaction to their account. So then when I go ahead and I finalize that, and then it will go ahead and ask if I'd like to print out the receipt. And let me go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and print this out to the screen. And I want to point out another function of AIM that you may want to consider if you're going to do a lot of charge transactions. Notice how up here at the top, there is a little spot up here for terms, but do you see how that's empty? Now, basically what you can do is you can set up what are called term descriptions. So with that in mind, this is transaction 1225. I'm just going to make a quick note of that. What you can do is in your customer maintenance area, you can go and you can set up what are called term descriptions. A term description basically allows you to give a plain English description for a specific term value. So for example, if I set up terms of 30 with the description of net 30, and I'll go ahead and save that, and then I'll just do a quick reprint of that transaction. So reprint last, and there's the transaction. So let's just print this to the screen. And of course it's gonna prove me wrong here, but what that would do is that would put that description of net 30 into that term. So really quick, let's just do another one here. John customer and RT14. I sell a lot of RT14s during these demos, if you can't tell. So let's just print this one up here. And now we'll see that this does have that term description there of net 30. So that's a nice, easy way of making sure that your customers, when they get their receipts, it will have essentially the layout of their term payment. Now, if you wanted to have more specific descriptions of what the terms actually mean, you could, by all means, set up extra details that would print down at the bottom of a transaction, essentially receipt notes, and those can be set up back specifically at the customer defaults. So back in here on the charge customer default type, we can go here to the receipt notes where you can have different notes if it's a charge sale versus if it's paid in full, or what we would call a cash sale. So this might say terms apply to payment, be sure to pay in full by end of term, or something like that. Whereas down here, it just might simply be a thank you for shopping. Of course, you can have general notes for every type of transaction back in the system comments area, which I believe I have talked about in other live streams, other webinars, and stuff like that. So, for example, just having a sales invoice receipt note here that says thank you for shopping our store. Have a great day. These would be specific to the customer type that is the individual customer at the bottom of those receipts. So hopefully this is making sense. Let me know if there's any questions. We've talked about setting up charge accounts. We've talked about descriptions of terms. We've talked about performing the charge sales. Now, of course, we need to remind your customers that they owe you money because, typically they're going to say, hey, I didn't get an invoice, I didn't get a bill, I didn't get a reminder. You can employ AIM to send out monthly open account statements. So much like the long-term contract function has a statements utility in the reports area, there is a similar one for open accounts. If we come into the reports menu of customers, halfway down or so is going to be the, almost all the way down, right here next to my neck is print OA statements. Now when you print an open account statement, it will basically ask for some criteria of which we would be sending this out. In most cases, you can leave all these details blank, but there are going to be a few things to keep in mind that will fill in and adjust themselves accordingly each time you send out a statement. For example, up here at the top, you can see it says last statement date is 11/15 of 2000, basically meaning I've never sent a statement out of this system. But if you were ever wondering about when was the last time you sent out statements, that date field right there will be your immediate notification to yourself of, oh yeah, I sent statements out last month or only a week ago or whenever it might have been. Now you'll see the statement date is defaulting to today's date, and then there is a general due date on the statement as a whole, which by default is 30 days out. Of course, the individual invoices will have individual due dates of their own, but we don't necessarily want to have or need to print out individual due dates for every transaction. We're just going to say, hey, make the payment by this date, and as long as you pay in full, you're basically going to be good to go. If necessary, you can specify an individual account, or you could just leave that blank and it'll print for all customer accounts. If you are halfway through a statement run and the printer explodes or runs out of toner or whatever the case might be, the paper gets jammed, you can come back, redo the print job using the same details, and then just put in up here in the restart account field the last successful account that had a statement print, and it would start from there. Joellen is asking, will this live stream be available to view afterwards? Definitely, Joellen. Back in the playlist drop down on the normal videos page, there is a playlist called recent live streams, and it will definitely be there. The recording will be. So thank you very much for the question. So getting back to statements, basically by setting this up and printing this out, this will then in essence print a statement for everyone who owes you money. Let's just go ahead and make this a bit bigger. So here's the statement for John Q customer, including the 2 transactions I just did. We can kind of see up here, the whole top half of this is kind of, or top third is kind of designed to be printed on perforated paper. So this could be tri-folded and put into a windowed envelope, and then just the top portion could be returned. So you have all the details necessary of who the account number is, the amount that was due, and then they can write in their own enter amount paid, and then they can keep the bottom third as like their statement stub. So you can see it also includes a breakdown of their 30, 60, 90 due dates, and if you had typed in a message back into the important message or statement message area, that would print at the bottom here. And then you can see it's basically doing one statement per customer. If you would prefer to email these, there is on the setup of the printout a little checkbox here that says enable email. By checkmarking that, any customers who you have an email address on file for and who you have not specifically set up as do not send emails will get their statement emailed rather than printed. You don't have to do this twice. Basically, it'll just do one print job, and anyone who's set up for email will get it. Anyone who is not will get a printed statement that you can turn around and mail out. Kara is asking if I could show an example of how the report will print to Excel. When you print a report to Excel, you can see in this case it's only got the option of formatted, basically meaning a formatted Excel output is going to look exactly like the Word document or PDF version would, or the printed version would. It'll just be in an Excel spreadsheet. So you would just then go ahead and point it to wherever it's going to be. Let's say it's going to be to my desktop. and then we'll just call it for Kara. And then we'll go ahead and do that. So then let me go ahead and find that, and we will double click and open it up. So then there is what it looks like. Let me bring that back up here. You can kind of see it's basically just how it looks, except it's essentially in an Excel document as opposed to a PDF. So if you wanted to do it that way, you certainly could. You can see it kind of looks a little funky. This is one of those reports that probably doesn't translate to Excel too well, but the other options for PDF or things like that may be a little bit more applicable in this case. There is typically another option for just raw data to Excel, but this report really wouldn't work too well in that respect. So basically, that's the whole idea of statements. Now, if you are planning to email them, you will want to make sure that you have the email module purchased. So you can always go to your Help and About AIM screen to check to see if the email capabilities is active. And if not, you can always give our support team a call, or excuse me, your sales rep a call. And with one purchase, we'll send you a new code, activate it, and in 5 minutes, you're up and running with email. So that's the whole idea of statements. And of course, when customers send their payments in or phone them in over the phone with credit cards, they could even, if you use the Vortex payment service or e-commerce service, they could log into their account and pay online. Either way, those are going to be processed as open account payments. So when a customer mails a payment in, you'll go into OA payment, and let's pull up John. Let's say he sends in his full amount. So in this case, he owes the $76.49. Let's say he paid that in full. Normally, I could just check mark, check mark, check mark. I could also just come down here and say select all. And then when I hit save on that, we'll just say that he paid via check and the check number was 1045. We'll go ahead and say OK on that. And then by finalizing that, he now has his dues cleared. So then he'll get a payment that you could turn around and email him a copy of this if you so desire, where it would then show the new balance of $0, and we do show the check being taken care of to clear that out. If the customer does log in online, if you are using the e-commerce services and the customer logs in and takes a payment online, you can come into the Active E area where you could go in and you can post web payments. I don't have this set up, nor do I have any examples, but in essence, anyone who has posted a payment online, by coming in here, you would see their account details and the amount of the payment. Assuming that your website is set up to capture the card info but not necessarily post it, you would transmit and then post, and then that would close those out. And you can kind of see down here, it lets you know if the credit cards are being charged through AIM. In other words, if you're using Global or WorldPay in-house to transact those, you would click both buttons. If you're using a direct credit card processor on your website, such as authorize.net or anything like that, where the card has already gone through, no need to transmit, you would just post. And then that'll go in and basically do the open account payment for you without you having to do them manually. So that's the whole idea behind that. And I know this is kind of a dying thing in this day and age, but for those of you out there in the retail world that do want to actually charge customers interest for their open balances or potentially post late fees, there is the ability in AIM to do that. Prior to sending out your monthly statements, you can go into the customer module where you can then calculate finance charges or basically calculate aging. When you do this utility, and you can see it's basically also keeping track of when this was last run. So first time you do this, you can essentially ignore the last run and the days ago on and just basically run it. but it will then keep in mind your last statement date and the finance charge calculation date. And then it'll basically say if the calculated finance charge is less than an amount that you want to put in, you can force the finance charge to be a certain amount. Otherwise, basically, if you think about basic math and going back to the concept that you can have that APR, the annual percentage rate on customer accounts, this will basically go through and generate additional finance charge invoices on the customer accounts based on whatever interest they may owe. So just kind of keep that in mind. And you can see here it's letting you know finance charges are calculated by multiplying that financeable average daily balance by the periodic rate. If you're not a CPA, don't worry, neither am I. Doesn't make sense to me either. But you can make an adjustment on what type of finance charge is being calculated. There is a system variable for this. If we come in here and search for finances, there is finance charge type. So this system variable defaults to a value of 1, which means it's going to calculate the finance charge on the average daily balance. If you change this to a 2, it will calculate the finance charge on unpaid invoices only. So in other words, version 1 is more akin to what you might experience on your credit card statement. Version 2 is more similar to, I guess, more like a loan or like a car loan or something along those lines. So either way, you can set it up however you want. And then if you do want to come in and manually adjust when was the last time that finance charge was run, you can come in here and adjust that, or if you needed to go back and recalculate or anything like that. If you do want to either or post late fees as opposed to finance charges, there is the ability to do that as well. This is all based on the actual due dates and if they are past due. If they're past due, then the post late charge function also can come into play, where you can basically have it put in a certain late charge amount. Let's say it's $25, and then it can go out and it can find all of the balances that are past due, and then it can essentially post those by check marking the accounts here. It can add a late charge to those customer accounts by putting that in up here and then check marking them and hitting save. And you can see you can post late charges on additional credit transaction types outside of just basic charge sales. They can be charge sales. They can also include open service ticket charges, layaway charges, short-term rentals that have not been paid, and then lesson invoices as well. So hopefully that all makes sense. That is basically what I wanted to talk about regarding open accounts and accounts receivable with AIM. So let me know if there's any questions. We're also then, speaking of the month ahead, where is my... I'm just going to look for... So next week, right? Is it next week? Today is the 9th. Yes, so next week, Thursday, we're going to expand a little bit on customers and accounts payable, not necessarily accounts payable, but just basically your customer services with purchase order tracking. So we'll be taking a closer look at that utility. And then more towards the end of the month, we will, if I can make this be bigger so I can read it, we will be looking at customer wish lists. So this is very much an overlooked feature, and I figured I'd just touch on it since we are getting into the holiday season, and hey, you never know, maybe it would be of use for you. Something I did want to just kind of point out at the behest of our sales team and marketing department, speaking of the holiday season, let me wave my magic wand and bring this up. So, if you received an email from TriTech this week, you probably got this blurb about our Black Friday specials going on. If not, feel free to go to this website here, contad.cc/31 uppercase Alpha Fargo Bravo lowercase Echo India. I'm probably screwing up my phonetics there, but basically it's just a newsletter that talks about our Black Friday sales. We've got all kinds of specials going on, and you can check these all out at your leisure. And hey, if you didn't get this, go to that website, click up here so that you can get those emails. And again, that address is right here. So I'll leave that up for you all to write down in case you want to grab that. And I will punch it here into the punch that into the chat as well if I can. There we go. Get that pasted in there. So there we go. And I will leave the chat window up as well. Normally I go ahead and close it out at the end of each session just so that people aren't posting questions, and then of course I'm not here to answer them because the seminar is done. But yeah, thank you all so much for attending today's live stream broadcast, and we'll see you next Thursday and the Tuesday after that. Oh, and then also, in case you didn't see, the month of December we're going to focus pretty heavily on physical inventory. So any questions you've ever had on physical inventory, hopefully by the end of next month we will get those answered for you. And this also means it's time for new submissions of live stream ideas. So head up to that poll up there and let me know what you want to see for calendar year 2022 as far as topics of interest. So thank again so much for coming, and we will see you soon. And if you want me to come on site, that's where I'll be the rest of this week. And if nothing else, we'll see you in either a live stream or an online training soon. Take care. I hope you all do great. We'll see you next time.